Hey everyone! Before we get into the video, I'm curious. What country are you watching from? Drop it down in the comments. I'd love to see where you're all from.
The night was thick with smoke and the distant howl of coyotes when Ahyoka first saw him. The Apache camp had gone quiet after dusk. Fires dimmed, songs fading into the desert wind. She had gone to fetch water from the stream that snaked through the ravine below the ridge. But when the moonlight hit the rocks just right, she noticed movement. Someone was there who shouldn't have been. A man stood by the water's edge. He wasn't from her part of the settlement. His clothes, his bearing, even the way he moved told her he was a warrior returning from somewhere far. His silence wasn't of peace, but of weariness. Ahyoka stayed hidden between the stones, watching him fill a flask, every movement deliberate, controlled. He looked like he'd carried years of dust and command on his shoulders. Then she saw another man appear from the trail above. The same eyes, the same presence, but something wilder in the way he moved. Two brothers. They didn't see her, not yet, but she could feel the quiet tension between them. The older one, Takoda, moved with discipline, as though he belonged to every rule written in the earth. The younger, Tarak, had the wind's defiance in his step. They said nothing at first, but their silence was a language older than words. "Still chasing ghosts, brother?" Tarak's voice finally broke the stillness. Takoda didn't turn. "You wouldn't understand. Maybe not, but the land hasn't changed. Only you have." Ahyoka's grip tightened on the clay pot. She shouldn't be hearing this. No woman was supposed to be near the warriors' meeting ground at night. Not when the elders still whispered about raids and missing scouts. Yet something about their voices, rough, proud, wounded, held her there. Tarak crouched by the stream, splashing water on his face. "They say the chief's daughter is to be promised soon." "Her father will choose wisely," Takoda replied without hesitation. "Maybe, but wisdom and desire don't always share the same fire." Ahyoka's pulse stuttered. They were talking about her. The sound of her breath caught on the wind. The brothers turned at once, eyes narrowing, hands instinctively moving to their weapons. "Who's there?" Takoda's tone was sharp, not yet threatening. She stepped out slowly, letting the moonlight fall on her. "It's only me," she said softly, voice steady despite the tremor under her ribs. The older brother lowered his guard first. "You shouldn't wander this far at night." "I wasn't wandering," she said. "The pots won't fill themselves." Tarak's eyes flicked toward her, curiosity flashing just beneath the surface. "You heard us?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I wasn't trying to," Takoda exhaled, weary. "Then forget what you heard. The council will speak when the time comes." Something in the way he said it, formal, detached, stung her more than it should have. As she turned to leave, Tarak's voice followed her, low and unsteady. "The night's not safe. Let me walk you back." Takoda's look cut through him. "I'll do it." They stared at each other for a moment too long, and in that silence, Ahyoka understood. This was not the first time they'd fought for something neither of them was meant to have. The walk back was wordless. The torches near the camp flickered faintly, throwing shadows that stretched across the sand. When they reached the outer circle, Takoda stopped. "You're kind to worry," Ahyoka said, breaking the silence. "I don't worry," he replied. "I take responsibility," she almost smiled. "Then who takes responsibility for the one who never listens?" His eyes met hers for the first time then, steady, unreadable. No one should have to. She wanted to say something more, but the moment slipped away. When she finally stepped back into her mother's tent, her pulse still drummed to the rhythm of their voices, the restrained one of Takoda and the reckless one of Tarak. Both different, both dangerous in ways she couldn't yet name. Outside, the brothers stood beneath the same moonlight, not speaking, not moving. The night had changed something between them, and neither would admit it. By morning, the camp had awakened to the sound of drums and murmurs. The air carried the scent of smoke and roasted maize, but beneath it lingered something heavier, expectation. The chief's men were gathering. A decision was near. Ahyoka helped her mother grind corn by the fire, though her hands worked slower than usual. Every few minutes, her eyes drifted toward the path that led down from the cliffs, the same one Takoda and Tarak had taken the night before. They returned, her mother said quietly, not looking up. The brothers of the Hawk clan. You remember them? Ahyoka only nodded. She remembered too well. The brothers had been gone for moons, fighting beyond the borders, defending hunting grounds and honor. Takoda was the elder, known for his calm and for his service to the council. Tarak was the younger, brilliant, reckless, sometimes a shadow in his brother's trail and sometimes his opposite. The elders spoke often of their courage. The women spoke more softly of their hearts. That afternoon, the camp gathered around the great fire. The chief's voice rose over the crowd, deep and steady. Our people grow stronger, but we must unite families, strengthen bonds. My daughter, Ahyoka, will be promised before the next moon. Her breath caught, though she had known it would come. The crowd murmured approval, faces turning toward her with warm smiles and knowing eyes. She lowered her gaze, feeling all of it, the pride, the fear, the weight. And among the crowd, she felt two stares that burned through the noise. Takoda's eyes were unreadable, distant as ever, fixed not on her but on the flames between them. Tarak's were sharper, restless, as if trying to challenge fate itself. Later, when the fire dimmed and the people dispersed, Ahyoka walked alone toward the river again. The stars hung low, their light glinting on the water's slow current. You shouldn't come here alone, a voice said behind her. She turned, half expecting it. Tarak stood there, arms crossed, his gaze half daring, half troubled. I wasn't waiting for you, she said, though the lie was thin as wind. Good, he replied. Then I don't owe you thanks for the invitation. A hint of a smile broke her restraint, but she turned away, staring at the water. You shouldn't speak to me this way. The camp is full of ears. Let them listen, he said. They already whisper. Why not give them something worth whispering about? She faced him now, trying to match his defiance. Your brother wouldn't speak like that. He stepped closer, voice softening. That's why he gets chosen first for everything. There was no touch, no word of affection, only that quiet charge between them, fierce and dangerous, a thing neither wanted to name. From the shadows near the tree line, Takoda watched. He hadn't meant to follow, but his feet had carried him anyway. The sound of their voices, her quiet laugh, Tarak's low tone, echoed like a memory he didn't want to admit was his. When Tarak reached for the water, his reflection rippled with hers, and Takoda turned away, jaw clenched. Some things, he thought, are meant to be sacrificed for order, but the desert wind didn't care for order. It carried voices and feelings through every dune, whispering what the heart refused to. By the time Ahyoka returned to her tent, the firelight had faded, but her pulse hadn't. She pressed a hand against her chest, feeling its rhythm, wild, unsteady, alive. And far from her tent, two brothers stared at the same moon, both wondering how something that hadn't even begun could already feel like betrayal. 3 days passed before Ahyoka saw either of the brothers again. The camp had settled into its rhythm. Hunters left before sunrise. Women wove by the fires. Children played among the tents. But something beneath the surface felt changed. Even the elders, she noticed, spoke in low voices now, as though the air itself had grown cautious. Word had spread. The council would soon choose who she was to marry. And though no names had been spoken aloud, everyone seemed to know which ones lingered in the air. That afternoon, while the sun bled low across the desert, Ahyoka carried herbs to the healer's tent. The air smelled of sage and smoke. She was half listening to the old woman's instructions when the flap of the tent lifted and Takoda stepped inside. He greeted the healer first, as was proper, before turning his gaze to Ahyoka. It wasn't sharp or cold this time. It held something quieter, heavier. The council wants to speak with you before nightfall, he said. Ahyoka nodded, setting down her basket. Do you know what for? They don't tell me everything, he replied. Not anymore. The healer's hands paused in her work, but she said nothing. There was history in Takoda's voice, something proud once, now wounded. When they stepped outside, the air felt heavier, the silence between them deeper. "You shouldn't walk me," she said, keeping her eyes ahead. "And yet I am," he answered. For a time, they said nothing else. The wind stirred dust around their feet, and far beyond the ridge, thunder rolled faintly. Finally, she spoke, barely above a whisper. "You think I'm weak, don't you?" He glanced at her, startled. "Why would I think that?" "Because you never look at me unless you have to." He stopped walking. "You're wrong." Ahyoka turned toward him then, and for the first time, saw the restraint in his face, something built brick by brick from years of duty. "You think your silence protects you," she said softly. "But it only makes others wonder what it hides." He stepped closer, and for a heartbeat neither of them breathed. Then he looked away. "You speak like someone who's never had to lead." "Maybe," she said. "But I've watched enough men break under the weight of pretending they're stronger than they are." The faintest smile crossed his lips, brief, unwilling but real. Before either could say more, a sharp whistle cut through the air. Riders approached, their horses kicking up dust. Tarak was among them, leading the patrol. His shirt was torn at the shoulder, a thin streak of blood across his arm. Ahyoka ran toward him without thinking. "You're hurt." "It's nothing," he said, laughing breathlessly. "A brush with a wild boar, not glory." Takoda arrived moments later, jaw tight. "You disobeyed the patrol route again." "Saved us time," Tarak shot back. "You should thank me. You risked your men for speed. I risked them for truth. There are signs near the border, tracks that shouldn't be there." Their voices clashed like flint and steel. Ahyoka stepped between them, her hands raised. "Enough," she said. "You're brothers." For a moment, they both looked at her, breathing hard, neither yielding. Then Takoda turned away. "Get your wound cleaned," he muttered. "I'll manage," Tarak replied. But later that night, when most of the camp slept, Ahyoka found Tarak by the firelight, wrapping his arm clumsily. Without asking, she knelt beside him and took the cloth. "You'll scar if you do it that way," she said. He smirked faintly. "Maybe I want a scar." "Why?" "So I don't forget the things I shouldn't want." She froze at his words, heart skipping. For a moment, neither spoke. The fire crackled. The wind whispered through the canyon, and something heavy settled in the silence. Then she handed him the finished bandage, stood and left without looking back. Behind her, Tarak watched the shadows she left behind, slender, calm, almost untouchable, and he understood what his brother must have been trying not to feel. And from the far side of camp, Takoda watched the same fire burn and wondered how long a man could keep duty and desire apart before one consumed the other. The storm arrived before dawn. Thunder rolled through the canyon like a warning, shaking the ground beneath the camp. The people moved quickly, securing hides, covering fires, tying down what the wind might claim. Rain poured in sheets, heavy and cold, filling the air with the scent of wet earth. Ahyoka stood at the edge of her tent, watching the lightning split across the sky. Every strike lit the valley for an instant, raw, brilliant, alive. She had never seen beauty so violent. From somewhere near the horses, she heard a shout, then another. She ran toward the sound, her bare feet splashing through puddles. Tarak was there, trying to calm one of the stallions, its reins tangled around a post. The animal kicked wildly, eyes rolling white with fear. "Move back," he shouted, but Ahyoka ignored him. She grabbed the loosened knot and pulled hard, freeing the strap just as the horse reared. For a moment, its hooves flashed inches from her shoulder. Tarak lunged forward, caught her by the arm, and pulled her out of the way. The horse bolted into the rain, vanishing into the storm. They stood still, breathing hard, the rain pounding down around them. "You could have been killed," he said, voice sharp with anger and fear. "So could you," she shot back. "But you didn't wait for anyone's help either." He laughed softly, shaking his head. "You're impossible." "And you're reckless," she countered. But there was no heat in their argument this time, only the faint tremor of adrenaline, of something wordless and close. Lightning flashed again, and in its brief light, She saw the way his eyes softened when they met hers. Not hunger, not boldness, something quieter, like recognition. He stepped back a moment later, breaking whatever had passed between them. "You should go," he said. "The storm's not done. And you? I'll find the horse." Ahyoka hesitated, then nodded and turned away. But as she walked back through the rain, she knew her pulse hadn't steadied. That night, when the camp finally slept, Takoda returned from the council shelter. His steps were heavy, his expression unreadable. He stopped near the dying fire where Ahyoka sat drying herbs that had survived the storm. She looked up. "You've been gone long." "There was much to discuss," he said. The silence between them stretched, filled with the soft hiss of rain outside. Finally, she asked, "And what did they decide?" Takoda's eyes lifted to hers, calm, careful, but with something wounded beneath. "They will announce your promise at the end of the next hunt." She felt her chest tighten. "To whom?" He didn't answer at once. His jaw flexed. "To me," her breath caught. The rain outside seemed to fall harder, or maybe it was only the sound in her head. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Takoda stood, the firelight flickering across his face. "I didn't ask for it," he said quietly. "But I won't dishonor it either." He turned to leave, then paused. "Tarak will understand. He always does." When he was gone, Ahyoka stared at the flames, her hands trembling. Somewhere deep in the camp, she heard the faint rhythm of footsteps. Tarak's, pacing in the rain. Neither of them knew the other was awake. Neither knew how close they both stood to ruin. The next sunrise came bright and cruel, as if the night's storm had never existed. The ground steamed under the first heat, and the air smelled clean, scrubbed of secrets. But the camp was alive with talk. Drums echoed from the valley floor, and the elders gathered beneath the great rock ledge where the council met. Today, the chief would speak the names of those to be joined, the promises that would bind the clans together. Ahyoka moved through the camp in silence. People smiled at her as she passed, their eyes warm, their voices low. She nodded, smiled when she had to, but her mind was elsewhere, still hearing Takoda's voice from the night before. When the drums stopped, the people fell quiet. The chief stood tall in the center, his staff glinting in the sunlight. He spoke first of unity, of the need for families to strengthen ties. Then his tone shifted. "Among us walks a woman of courage and skill, whose spirit has guided our people through storm and calm alike. Her name is Ahyoka." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The chief lifted his hand for silence. "She shall be promised to Takoda, son of the Hawk clan." The sound that followed was soft. Applause. Cheers. But Ahyoka heard only the rush of her own pulse. Takoda stepped forward, every movement measured and respectful. His expression was unreadable. He bowed his head to the chief, then turned toward her. When their eyes met, the world felt suddenly smaller, like the space between them was both everything and nothing. He extended his hand. It was what tradition required. She hesitated only a moment before taking it. His palm was warm, steady, the grip neither forceful nor gentle, simply final. But in the crowd, Tarak stood motionless, his chest tight, his jaw set hard. He didn't speak, didn't move, only stared at the scene until someone beside him whispered his name. Then he turned sharply and left. The celebration lasted into the afternoon. Music, laughter, the scent of food, everything that should have felt joyous. But beneath it all, Ahyoka felt something hollow. Takoda stayed close, saying little. He seemed to sense her unease but did not ask about it. He only watched her from the corner of his eye, as though knowing that what stood between them wasn't silence, but something heavier, something neither of them had chosen. Later, when most of the people had drifted away, Ahyoka found herself walking toward the edge of the camp again, drawn by habit. She wasn't surprised to find Tarak there, leaning against a boulder, his hair falling over his face, his eyes dark. "So it's done," he said without looking up. "Yes," she answered. He gave a humorless laugh. "Our people love their ironies. They say the spirits choose wisely, but I wonder what spirit thought this was fair. She frowned. You speak as if I had a choice. He finally looked at her. Did you want one? The question struck deeper than it should have. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The truth sat like fire behind her ribs, dangerous to release, impossible to ignore. You shouldn't talk like this, she said at last. It dishonors your brother. And what of what it does to me? That silenced her. He stepped closer, voice low. Every time I see you, I feel like I'm standing in a storm again. I can't breathe, can't think. I hate it. Tarak, I hate it, he repeated, softer now. But I can't stop. For a long time, the wind was the only sound between them. Then she whispered, You must stop. He nodded, though his eyes said he wouldn't. When she turned to leave, he didn't follow. He only watched her walk back through the camp, her figure small against the sunset, his brother's promised bride. And far behind her, Takoda stood by the chief's fire, speaking to no one, his face lit by flame and shadow. He didn't know what words had passed between them, but he felt it. The invisible tremor between two hearts that should never have met. That night, for the first time in his life, Takoda prayed not for victory or strength. He prayed for blindness. The moon rose full and pale that night, veiled in a thin mist that turned its light to ash. It was the night after the naming, yet the camp was still restless. Songs and chatter echoed faintly from the fires, the smell of roasted corn and smoke lingering in the air. Ahyoka sat by the edge of her tent, hair unbound and flowing down her back like ink. The beaded cords at her waist glimmered faintly in the moonlight. She had not eaten, nor had she joined the dances. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Takoda's calm face beside the fire, and Tarak's turned away one. When a shadow fell across the tent's entrance, she didn't need to look up to know who it was. Takoda, she said quietly. He stepped in, tall and composed as ever, though there was a weariness in his eyes. You did not come to the feast. I wasn't hungry. The people noticed. She met his gaze. Let them, he exhaled slowly, crossing his arms. You are not a woman who hides. I know that much of you. Her lips curved faintly. And yet here I am. He studied her, his face unreadable. Our promise will be blessed at the next moon. You will move to my lodge after that. I want you to know I will not rush you. I will not force closeness where there is none. His voice was steady, but the restraint in it made her chest ache. She nodded once. You are kind to say that. I am not kind, he said softly. Just aware. I have seen how you look when you think no one watches, and I have seen how my brother looks when you pass. Her breath caught. Takoda, I am not blind, Ahyoka. His tone was calm, almost gentle, but I am a man who believes in duty. Whatever this thing is between you two, it ends tonight. Before it breaks everything that holds us together. She stood, heart pounding. You think I would dishonor you? I think you are human. For a long time, neither spoke. The silence between them stretched, heavy but not cruel. Then he turned toward the flap. Tomorrow we leave for the Northern Valley. The council wants to survey the hunting grounds before winter. You will come with us. I will, she whispered. He hesitated once more at the entrance, then said quietly, You remind me of my mother. She used to say the moon chooses who it wants to watch. Tonight, it watches you. And he left. Later, when the camp had gone quiet and the fires burned low, Ahyoka walked toward the river. The air was sharp and still. Her breath made small clouds in the dark. The water reflected the moon like a piece of silver glass. And beside it, as if drawn by the same unspoken pull, stood Tarak. He didn't turn right away. He seemed lost in thought, hands submerged in the cold stream, hair hanging loose around his face. You shouldn't be here, she said, voice trembling between warning and want. He smiled faintly. I could say the same. They stood a few paces apart, the air between them thick with everything they hadn't said. He looked up at her finally, his eyes shadowed but alive. He told you, didn't he? She nodded. Then say it, Tarak murmured. Say you'll stop thinking of me. Say you'll forget. Her throat tightened. If I say it, it won't make it true. He stepped closer, boots crunching softly on the frost. Then don't lie. She took a step back, but he followed, slowly, carefully, as if afraid the air might shatter between them. Do you think I wanted this? He said, voice low. Every time I look at you, I feel like the ground will open beneath me. But I still look. I can't not. Tarak, please, no, he said, shaking his head. You don't understand. When they called your name and his together, I felt something in me break, and I can't put it back. Her eyes glistened. Then you must learn. He laughed softly, bitterly. You sound like him. Maybe he's right. Tarak's gaze softened. He reached out then, slow and uncertain, his fingers brushing the braid at her shoulder. The touch was feather-light, barely there, but it stole the air from her lungs. For a moment, time held still. The river whispered. The moon burned above them, pale and cold. Then she stepped back, breaking the spell. This ends tonight, she said, voice barely steady. His jaw clenched, but he didn't reach for her again. If that's what you want, it's what has to be. He nodded once, sharp and final, though his eyes said otherwise. Then he turned and walked into the trees, the shadows swallowing him whole. Ahyoka stayed by the river long after he was gone. The night was quiet, except for the faint echo of drums in the distance. Songs of promise, of love, of loyalty. She pressed her hand against her chest, feeling the wild, uneven rhythm beneath. And when she looked up at the ash-colored moon, she whispered, "Then blind me too." The dawn came thin and cold, the kind of morning that bit through cloth and bone alike. The sky was washed in silver, the earth still heavy with mist from the river. The camp stirred slowly, voices low, fires flickering, horses snorting as they were saddled for the journey north. Ahyoka rose before most. Her hair was braided tight now, her tunic bound firmly by the leather belt, as if she could hold herself together with the same strength. The night clung to her skin, every word and glance still echoing in her mind. Tarak moved among the riders, quiet but restless. He checked the horses, tied the packs, said little. When he passed her, their eyes didn't meet. She looked down at her hands, pretending to adjust the strap of her satchel. Takoda stood near the front, speaking with the chief's scouts. His posture was straight, the woven red sash stark against his chest. When he turned, he caught sight of Ahyoka and gestured for her to join him. "You'll ride with me," he said. "The paths ahead are narrow." She nodded once. "Yes," he helped her mount, his hand firm at her waist but his touch brief. The small moment of contact made her stomach twist with guilt and gratitude both. By the time the sun lifted fully above the ridge, they had left the camp behind, 30 riders strong, cutting through canyons and scrubland toward the mountains that waited like sleeping beasts in the north. For hours, the only sounds were hooves on stone and wind whispering through dry grass. The air smelled of sage and dust. Ahyoka's gaze drifted often to the horizon, to where the land folded into shadow. But more than once, her eyes strayed back. To Tarak, a few horses behind them, his hair wild in the wind, his face unreadable. He never looked at her. Not once. And somehow, that hurt more than anything. By midday, they reached a valley narrow and green, bordered by cliffs. The scouts dismounted to inspect the stream that cut through the rocks. Takoda called a halt. "We rest here." The men unloaded supplies, some tending to the horses while others started small fires for food. Ahyoka knelt by the stream to fill the water skins, her reflection trembling on the surface, 2 dark eyes, a face caught between duty and ache. Tarak's reflection appeared beside hers before she heard his steps. "Do you need help?" he asked quietly, her hands froze in the water. "No." He crouched beside her anyway, taking one of the skins from her grip. "You'll spill it if you keep shaking like that." "I'm fine." He didn't answer. They worked in silence, filling the skins. When his hand brushed hers, she pulled away quickly, nearly dropping the flask. He looked at her then. Just a glance, but it felt like a wound opening. "You think distance will save you?" "Stop," she whispered. "Someone will see. Then let them," he said under his breath. Let them know I'm not made of stone." Before she could reply, a voice called from the ridge above, sharp and urgent. "One of the scouts, riders." The camp stilled instantly. Takoda was on his feet in a heartbeat, bow in hand, eyes narrowing toward the far slope. Dust rose in the distance, too much for wind alone. Ahyoka's pulse jumped. "Who are they?" Tarak straightened, gaze locked on the growing cloud. "Not ours." The thunder of hooves grew louder, echoing through the canyon walls. Takoda gave quick orders, half the men to form a line by the rocks, the others to secure the supplies. "Ahyoka, stay behind me," he said, but she was already moving toward her bow. "I can fight." "I know you can," he said without looking back, "but not today." The riders broke through the dust, 5, maybe 6, faces marked with paint, their horses dark and lean. Raiders from a rival band. The first arrow came fast, cutting through the air with a shriek. It struck the dirt inches from Takoda's boot. Then chaos broke loose. Shouts, the snap of bowstrings, the crash of hooves on stone. Ahyoka ducked behind a boulder, loading her own arrow with trembling fingers. She aimed, fired. One rider dropped. Tarak was already in motion, moving through the smoke like shadow, knife flashing. Takoda fought beside him, their movements almost mirrored, trained and disciplined. For a moment, it felt like the earth itself had gone mad. Then, as suddenly as it began, it ended. The last of the raiders fled into the hills, leaving behind silence and dust. Ahyoka's breath came hard and uneven. Her arm ached from the bowstring. She looked around. Their people were shaken, but alive. Takoda wiped the blood from his knife, eyes scanning the horizon. "They were scouts," he muttered. "There will be more." Tarak joined him, jaw tight. "They're hunting something." "Or someone," Takoda said quietly. Their eyes met. Brothers, united for now, but something unspoken passing between them. Ahyoka stepped closer, heart still pounding. "What do we do?" Takoda turned to her, face calm but grim. "We ride faster, and pray the spirits still favor us." That night, the fires burned lower than usual. The men spoke little, the air thick with the scent of smoke and tension. Ahyoka sat by the outer edge of camp again, watching sparks rise into the dark. Tarak sat a few paces away, silent, staring into the flames. And Takoda, always the steady one, stood watch at the edge of the light, eyes on the horizon, the red sash across his chest fluttering in the cold wind. None of them spoke. But all three knew that whatever storm had begun in their hearts was about to meet one far greater. The next morning came without songbirds, without color. The valley lay quiet beneath a shroud of fog, as if the earth itself mourned something it could not name. The raiders had been driven off, but their tracks lingered in the mud like an omen. Takoda was the first to rise. He moved through camp in silence, checking the sentries, his face unreadable beneath the pale light. His men respected him more than ever. He'd fought like a spirit possessed the night before. But something behind his eyes had dimmed. Tarak, on the other hand, looked unmoored. His body bore no wound, but his thoughts were elsewhere, turning in circles that had no end. Ahyoka watched them both as she knelt by the river to wash the dried blood from her hands. Her reflection wavered with the ripples, but she couldn't bring herself to look away. When Takoda approached, she rose quickly. "The raiders?" "Gone north," he said. "But they'll return. We move at dusk." She nodded, but before he could turn away, she said softly, "You fought well." He gave a faint, humorless smile. "We both did." His gaze flicked to her bow resting on the ground. "You shouldn't have fired. But I'm glad you did." The words held something she couldn't name. Respect, resentment, or maybe fear of what they were both starting to feel, something too close to understanding. Before she could respond, Tarak's voice cut through the mist. "Takoda." Both turned. Tarak stood near the river bend, holding something in his hand, a carved arrowhead, one of the raiders' weapons. Its edge was dark with dried blood. Takoda took it, eyes narrowing. "This isn't Apache work. No, Tarak said. It's northern. Could be one of the mountain bands. Ahyoka's pulse quickened. Why would they come this far south? Tarak's jaw tightened. Maybe for what we carry. Maybe for who we travel with. Takoda looked at him sharply. You think they followed her? Ahyoka's breath caught. Me? Tarak didn't answer, but the silence said enough. Takoda's tone hardened. You speak without proof. Do I? Tarak stepped closer. The night before we left, one of their scouts was seen near the lower ridge, watching the council fire. Who was standing at its center? Enough, Takoda said. But Tarak kept going, voice low, dangerous. Maybe they wanted to stop the Union. Maybe they thought she was promised to one of their own. Ahyoka stared at him, hurt flashing like a blade. You think I brought this? He looked at her then, and regret broke through the anger. No, I think you're caught in something bigger than any of us. But the spirits don't care about fairness. Takoda turned away, fingers closing tight around the arrowhead. We ride north, he said again. And when we reach the borderlands, this ends. They left by dusk. The land grew colder as they climbed, the air thin and sharp. The forests thinned into barren ridges where even the wind sounded lonely. That night, they camped by a narrow river that cut through the rock like glass. The stars above were endless, too bright to stare at for long. Ahyoka couldn't sleep. She walked to the water's edge, her blanket drawn close around her shoulders. She thought of home, of peace, of what it might feel like to not be wanted by two hearts that couldn't have her. Then she heard footsteps. She didn't turn. I thought you'd come, she said quietly. Tarak stopped beside her, the moonlight catching the stubble along his jaw. You always do. She looked down at the reflection of the two of them side by side. Why do you keep finding me? Because I can't stop, he said simply. The silence stretched long between them, broken only by the rush of the river. You shouldn't be here, she whispered. He laughed softly, without joy. You say that every time, and every time you stay. She closed her eyes. You're cruel. He shook his head. No, just cursed. When he reached for her hand, she didn't move away, but she didn't take it either. The distance between them felt heavier than any chain. Finally, she said, when we reach the borderlands, you'll forget me. I won't, he said, even if I try. She looked up at him then, eyes wet in the moonlight. Then you'll never find peace. He gave a faint, broken smile. Neither will you. Behind them, Takoda stood in the dark, unseen. He had followed when she left camp, a quiet instinct he couldn't explain. He heard every word carried on the wind, his hand clenched at his side. Not in rage, but in something colder. He'd prayed for blindness once. Tonight, the spirits had denied him again. He turned and walked back to the dying fire, his red sash fluttering behind him like a wound that would never close. And by the river, Ahyoka and Tarak stayed until dawn, neither speaking again. When the sun rose, they both pretended nothing had passed between them. But the river remembered. The mountains rose before them like the spines of sleeping beasts, their peaks veiled in snow and cloud. For 3 days they rode through silence, the cold biting deeper with each breath. No one spoke of the night by the river, but its ghost followed close behind, woven into every glance, every pause too long to be coincidence. By the 4th dawn, they reached the borderlands. The land here was sacred. No tribe claimed it. No man stayed long. It was said the spirits punished those who lingered. They set camp in the shadow of a broken mesa. The air smelled of stone and ash. Takoda moved apart from the others, standing where the wind tore through the cliffs, his red sash snapping behind him. Tarak sat sharpening his knife, though there was nothing left to cut. Ahyoka gathered dry grass for the horses, her hands trembling though she swore it was only from the cold. When Takoda spoke, his voice carried over the wind. They'll come tonight. Tarak looked up sharply. How do you know? Because I'd come for vengeance too, he said. Ahyoka turned. Then we should leave. Cross the ridge before dark. Takoda shook his head. We finish this here. His gaze met hers. No more running. The sun bled out behind the cliffs. As dusk fell, the raiders came. Shadows moving through fog, silent as ghosts. There were more than before, their faces painted in bone-white lines. The brothers fought side by side again, moving like parts of the same storm. The air filled with the hiss of arrows, the clash of blades, the smell of iron and smoke. Ahyoka fired until her fingers bled, until the world narrowed to breath and motion. Then, silence. The last raider fell into the river, blood spreading across the current like spilled ink. The world stilled. Tarak was on his knees, an arrow in his side. He laughed once, hoarse and bitter. Guess the spirits found me first. Ahyoka dropped beside him. No, she said, voice breaking. You'll live. He smiled faintly. You still lie beautifully. Takoda knelt on the other side, his face carved from grief and fury both. He pressed his hands to the wound, but the blood kept coming. Tarak reached out, gripping his brother's wrist. Don't carry me again, he whispered. You've carried me all my life. Takoda's throat worked, but no sound came. Tarak's hand slipped, fell still. Ahyoka bowed her head, tears mixing with the dust. The river ran red below them, whispering things only the dead could hear. When dawn came, Takoda buried his brother by the riverbank. He placed the bloodied arrowhead atop the cairn and stood in silence for a long time. Ahyoka approached quietly. He loved you, she said. Takoda didn't look at her. And you? She hesitated. I think I loved what both of you were, together. The fire and the calm. The storm and the shore. He turned then, eyes hollowed by loss. And now? Now, she said softly. There's only the river. They stood there for a long while, watching the current take the last traces of blood away. Then, without another word, Takoda mounted his horse. Where will you go? She asked. Home, he said. If it still remembers me. She nodded. Then may the river guide you. He gave a small nod in return, then rode north, the red sash trailing behind him until it vanished into the fog. Ahyoka stayed until the wind rose, lifting the mist from the valley. She looked once more at the grave, then at the mountains beyond. Her heart felt heavy, but clean. When she finally walked away, she didn't look back. The river kept flowing, unbothered by memory or sorrow. And for the first time since the war began, it sang.
Tell me what kind of story you want next. Your ideas might be the next video. Also hit that subscribe button if you want the stories to never stop. See ya.